Hello, this is Paola Guthrie from Creating Purpose with Pao. I welcome you to the Spanglish World uh, Network as well as a Her Work. As well as Her Network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores, iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure that you please rate it and that you leave a comment because feedback is important to us. The app is totally free. Single TV is also available in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, as well as Roku and Roku sticks, and all smart TVs from 2016 till now. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to welcome Patricia Bartell. She's an amazing business coach and a professional musician. Thank you so much for being here, Patricia.
Woohoo! Yay, I'm happy to be here with you.
I appreciate your time and being able to be here today. So please share with us who Patricia Bartell is. Share a little bit about your story so we get to know you more.
Sure. So originally I'm from Bolivia. I was adopted when I was almost 5 years old. So I had 13 years where I lived in Montana. I'm one of 18 in my family. So we lived on a huge 80-acre farm. I learned how to milk the cows and do all the farm work. And it was pretty abusive upbringing. So it wasn't until I went to college where I experienced my first freedom to be like Patricia, whoever Patricia was at that time. And so from there, I just give you a little background. I'm a professional musician. So during those 13 years, I turned to music as my escape. And it didn't realize till later that it would actually become my voice. So we weren't children to be seen and not heard. And so I opened up a studio and teaching music and kind of went along the journey. And I know we can probably get into that a bit later. So turned from a music teacher into a business owner, only because I nearly lost my business. So I had to learn a few things so along the way, but mostly becoming and knowing who Patricia is today is very different than who Patricia was even 10 years ago.
So, what was the moment that you gained that purpose in your life that you say, this is what, this is who Patricia is and this is who she's going to become?
Yes, it was really interesting because in 2012, I got to host the World Championships for the accordion. So as a professional musician, I'm a concert accordionist. And I loved it. And so here's 2012, judges from all over the world are coming in, and the cream of the crop, the best of the best, are performing for and competing for the World Cup. So during the event, there was one particular instructor from Bosnia, so I'll call him Mr. Bosnia, who's like, "Oh, I'd love to come work for you," and I said, no, I'm tiny, and next month again, we can work together. And then after the third time, I'm like, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Two master teachers working together, it wouldn't be that hard to bring in more students. So that happened, but when he came, he needed to be on a salary, for expenses, and my other teachers were on an hourly. And so I went to go pay the paycheck. I'm like, this is a lot for what we're bringing in. But I'm like, no, we can do that. I'll market and all that. So then the next month rolls around. Here I am at my desk writing that big check again and realizing the numbers. Now, I'm not really good at math, but it is very clear when one number is bigger than the other number. And clearly the number for the bills and stuff was bigger than what we were bringing in. But miraculously, we were still making it month to month. And I realized, I don't know much about marketing and I really need to dig in. So I was doing everything I could and just lost, really. I don't know who to turn to do this. A lot of promises made. I'd go through courses and nothing was working. And then I saw an ad on Facebook and it said world-class marketing. I'm like, of course, this is exactly what I need. So I clicked the button, learn more, and I'm reading all this copy. I'm like, this is exactly it. And I need that and that. And it says, click here to join the event. So I clicked there and there was the $ and then the 1, the 0, and a K. And I thought, who charges this much? $10,000. And of course, it didn't matter if it was an M or a T, a Q. I didn't care. It was all the same. I just there's no way. So the next morning I get up and I just I have to find a way. I will find a way. And that's actually when I made a decision to do something about it. Wasn't sure what. So later that week, I am headed to a music rehearsal, and I pick up a manila envelope. Actually, I might even have one here. A manila envelope thinking, ah, I'll grab my music. I flipped it over because I had gotten it a couple weeks earlier and I just threw it on the shelf. And it was from a lawyer's office. And my heart started racing. I'm like, did I miss a bill? Is somebody suing me? I mean, I'm just racing through my mind. So I tear it open and read it. And then everything just like, when those moments, everything just stops. And I saw a name I recognized. And it was Elizabeth Welty. And she says, it's not much, but I know it will help. She had passed away and left me in her will. And there was just enough money to attend Business Mastery with Tony Robbins. And it was at Tony Robbins where he was speaking about our beliefs and how we think and who we are. And this was a new world of personal development for me and also business. But I didn't realize I was the chokehold of my business just by beliefs, but mostly of who I was. And so there were so many layers I had to go through. But that was the pivotal moment when I realized what people say to me, because you know how we have so many people say so many things to us. And I just took them at what I perceived as truth, not realizing that I had the power to decide what that meant. Number one, to decide what other people say to me, what that means, and also my own thoughts. What does that mean and why? And so that was, I think, like you are asking, is just what was the pivotal moment when I realized I can create a new me, the real me. And, so much of the things that we have in our mind, we could become a prison of our own thoughts.
Yes. I'm going to make a pause right now for everybody, for all of us to understand who Patricia was before she went to this event. She said, what I heard is like you would say, oh, everything's going to be okay. Even though you knew you had to come up with a certain amount of money each month to pay your teachers, to pay your rent bill and all those utilities and everything, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes we get into that mindset where it's like, yeah, everything's gonna be okay, everything's gonna be okay. But if we don't do anything about it, it's on us. But here, Patricia looked for marketing solutions, and then through her search, she found a uh, event, for her to be like, okay, I'm going to make things happen. Things have to change. Yeah, everything's going to be okay. But if we want our life to improve, sometimes we have to take action. So, with you taking action and being able to pay, thanks to a blessing in the sky, that you got the mail, right? You got
Mhm.
a check, and it was a blessing for you in being able to afford to go to the event. But you took action. That's what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, that sometimes we live life, oh, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. But we don't take control of our life. And you did, like at that time, I feel like you did. And by taking action and having taken control of your life, you find out that you had some limiting beliefs that was the chokehold of your business. It was like your psychology wasn't right. So tell us, what was one limiting belief that was holding you back?
Yes, it's interesting because at that event, obviously, Tony's huge on our limiting beliefs, right? So the first one, this might sound interesting, but I didn't grow up looking like anybody. I'm originally from Bolivia, and with adopted parents, how kids, they look like their mom, or they can see themselves with their siblings. And there was 12 of us that were adopted, and two of my brothers were Native Americans. So they would encourage me, like, you look like us. You have black hair, brown skin. You look like us. But clearly inside, I still didn't look like anybody. And what that caused me to believe was that I wasn't pretty. I wasn't good looking. And so one of the things is when people are so conscious about how they appear or how they look, you tend to withdraw. And so I withdrew thinking, okay, I don't want to be seen. Obviously, like I said, when I was growing up, children were to be seen and not heard. So I didn't speak, and because of that, I was hiding. And then when Tony Robbins was talking about our limiting beliefs and what we believe about ourselves, and he did an interesting scenario about a guy asking a girl on a date. And I'm listening to it, and he's like, the guy comes out, and the girl wants the date. And so she's like, would you want to go to lunch with me at, Friday at noon? And he comes up and he says, no, really gruff and stuff. And I was like, and he's asked, so how would you respond? And I'm like, clearly he's made his point clear. He's like, he does not want. And the girl had the same opinion. And it was brought to us like, that is our perception. And then another girl says, oh, well, what about Saturday at noon? And he said, yes. And it was a moment for me to realize, you know what? The way I believe about myself, I don't show up fully because I'm so intimidated by what other people are thinking about me. And you know what? They may not, whether they are or not, most likely they're probably not. We create all these scenarios. And so that was one of my limiting beliefs, was not thinking I was good enough, or I even looked good enough, or my voice, or how I would speak, because Spanish was my first language, even though I only speak enough to get myself in trouble now. But I would twist words. I'm like, I'm not a good speaker, so I can't do that. And I just began to realize that I can change every single thought. And so I welcomed every day, every negative thought, like you can't do this, or who are you, or this. I'm like, oh, cool. So let me think about it and get a hold of it, because I knew I could change it, because it was one truth, which was actually a lie. And I could just like, is that really true? And what if it wasn't? And what could it mean? And that was a big shift for me. So I would lay in bed in the morning, and then like, any thoughts? Am I thinking anything negative? And to the point I was like, okay, I guess, I would just go along my day, because I learned to create the world I live. And all that starts with, how we think.
Yes. And now I love that you mentioned that, because if we would walk around our life thinking that everybody loves us, that everybody likes us, our lives would be totally differently, because we would not have
Absolutely.
that fear of like rejection, the fear of not being good enough, the fear, like we
Mhm.
don't speak clearly enough for everybody to like us or to accept us. So
Right.
I think we all suffer, because I'm an immigrant. So automatically coming to a different country, I guess you and I share the same. It's like we didn't speak their language, so we had to learn to speak English. And I have an accent that I thought it was holding me back, that I could not speak publicly, that I
Mhm.
could not get a nice job, but I could talk to people. I was very quiet as well, so I relate to I relate to your story, but it's just a perception, because
It
it's
is
like
totally a perception. And like you said, I love what you said, because when we come into a room of people, I used to be like, I'm just kind of be at the side, because I thought I was an introvert, thinking, just be quiet and shy. I had no idea. You turn me loose in a room, I could be like, I'm right there. I want to just hug everybody, just see how's everybody doing and all that. So, but what changed was, now I'm like, hey, if we believe something, let's say if we go in the room, we're not sure, somebody may not like us, somebody gives us kind of a funny look, all these things, the opposite is also true, because the law of polarity says everything has two sides. Whether it's a piece of paper has two sides, a penny, a coin, everything has two sides, and so does a story. So whatever story we make up in our mind, there's two sides to it. So the old Patricia was like quiet, very polite, walking in the room and waiting to be invited. But now the new Patricia today is I go into a room, I just believe everybody likes me. I believe people love me. And I also believe there will be some people in that room that will pay me a lot of money as a business coach. It's all belief.
yeah, it is. It is. Now let's go back to your business coaching. Uh, Tell me that limiting belief that your father uh, passed down to you,
Mm,
that
yeah.
you thought you weren't good with finances.
Yes. There's times in my business I would hit a ceiling. And I was wondering, like, what? Why do I keep hitting these ceilings? And then each one was very interesting because, when you recognize a pattern, I begin to recognize patterns like, oh, every time I get to this ceiling, it's usually something I'm thinking consciously or subconsciously. And I was at one place, I'm like, I couldn't break through to my first 6 figures. And it's like, I almost get there, and it's like, something happens. And I was thinking, because Albert Einstein says that so much happens in the imagination and when we think. It's like we're so busy doing things, but when we take time to actually think, there's some amazing things that we have inside, just how we were created. And the thought I remembered when we went, I was 9 years old, and we were going to take a tour through California to Disney World, the Grand Canyon, back up to the Yellowstone. And it was the first time my family was ever going to go on vacation. And I was so excited. I'm like, we've never taken vacation because there's so many kids, right? So my dad rents one of those big motorhomes. And I watch it. I'm standing there and I'm watching it come into the driveway, and it's humongous. I'm pretty petite, so everything is humongous. But it was so big. And just like a kid, I'm like, my eyes are always like, this is so amazing. And he comes around and I'm just in awe. And I said, Daddy, how much? This must be expensive. How much does it cost? And in that moment, he said, I am not going to tell you because you would not be able to handle it. And here I went from this amazed to, I wouldn't handle it because, and truth be told, I really didn't have concept of any numbers. I mean, he could have told me it was $100, it was $1 million. It was all the same to me. But I carried that subconsciously, even to my adult life and into business, that I can't handle finances because I began to put my own meaning to it. And that meaning became to dictate how I showed up and what I believed about finances. There's a lot of beliefs about finances, but that was the main one. And once I realized, and it was just like in a split second, like, oh, I can handle money. Okay, maybe not a 9-year-old what I do today, but that was a limiting belief, if you will, that I had and carried. Once that was uncovered, I realized, no, I can handle it. You just watch me. I broke through my first 6 figures.
Yeah. That is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, with this story, we're showing you guys the power of believing, and
Mm-hmm.
also the power of limiting beliefs. If we think we can't, if we think we're not enough, if we think that we're not ready yet, so we're going to look, like our psychology is going to look for those experiences to tell us, yeah, you're not enough, yeah, you're not ready, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you don't speak good English. So it begins with, I think, understanding ourselves and understanding our limiting beliefs in order for us to work with them, move them out of the way, dissolve them, let them go,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can create those new beliefs that are going to allow us to take us, to a better life, more joyful,
Correct.
happy, playful, where we truly need to be. I'm learning that we're here to enjoy life, to be playful, to love one
Exactly.
another.
Yeah, exactly. I think another thing is just being I became really aware of how I thought, and before I didn't realize, I didn't put anything to that. I think I was so busy just doing so many things. You put out so many fires, especially as a business owner. I have a brick and mortar music business and teaching students. That's one part. And I got so busy just trying to make everything work that I never thought about how I thought about things. And then once I realized it really all has to do with how we think, and just becoming really aware and being open to knowing that we're not bad just because we have negative thoughts. Some people put themselves down because oh, I'm so bad, or I've done so many bad things or whatever. And it's like, if you continue looking at what I've done bad or what I'm not good at, what your eye hooks into grows, and so it's like, I was studying with a Jewish rabbi, and he was telling me in the Jewish history, they know that whatever your eye hooks into is what you get. And so one time I was saying, but I'm so weak in this and that. And he listened. let me talk it through. And then he's like, all right. And he began to take me down another path. And I didn't realize what he was beginning to do is speak into my strengths of who I was. And within 6 months, Paola, this was so amazing that all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, we've not dealt with any of these other things that I'm like, these are my problems, right? And I wanted those dealt with. And I realized they were gone because I put no attention. I didn't give them a platform to continue to grow. And so I was, learning that and realizing it is where your focus goes, energy flows, what your eye hooks into grows. And I'm like, okay, won't give that a platform and look at what I want to create, what I want to be in my atmosphere, in my world, the people I want to be with, the people I want to attract even. So it is really, really true. It's like we've got to, it's just being aware and knowing it's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah, so if you guys are dealing with any negative thoughts, do not give them any attention. Try to move them aside. Try not to give them your 100% because your life is passing. Life is passing by, and sometimes we're stuck in the, but she told me that I wasn't, good enough or something. Sometimes our mind just automatically just gets a hold of one belief, and it doesn't let you live life because you're stuck in that thought in that time period. Maybe it could be 5 years ago, and you're still dwelling on that moment. So it's like we have to learn to let go, and like Patricia said, it's like don't give them any attention. Focus on where you are going or who you want to become or the
Exactly.
projects that you want to finish, and learn to manage those negative thoughts. Put them aside. There are strategies, there are techniques. I know, I have overcame so many that there is a song. I have a song for them now. Like if a negative thought pops in my head, and if something I've been dealing with for a couple of months, let's say, it's like there is a song that says bye bye.
I love it.
So like I played that song and I was like, okay, time to move on.
I
So,
love that. I love that.
and we all have them. We have about
Yeah.
60 to 70,000 thoughts, and the majority of them are negative. So
Yeah. And the
we
majority
must.
of them are from yesterday. And so if there's we wake up thinking about all the things we have to do, what happened yesterday, we're really reliving our past into our future. And so that's where to me, I was like, if I want new things to happen, I need to create some new things. What do I want? You and I have a same, one of our people we look up to and mentor is Joseph McClendon. And I love how he says, the first question is, what do you want? And nobody ever asked me that growing up. What do you want? I was told what I wanted. I was told what I should have. But to really sit and like, what do I want? And then, we don't take enough time to dream, to dream the impossible. There is a song, to dream the impossible dream, and I used to listen to that as a kid, and I never took it to heart what that really meant. Just that line. I don't know about the rest of the song, but it's like, okay, what can I dream that would be so huge? And a few years ago, I knew what it was, and I tell you this dream because you have to have a dream that's bigger than you, and to know that it's so big that I know I cannot fulfill it alone. And my dream, one of my dreams, I've got many dreams, but one of my dreams is to be the first female quintillionaire. And
Oh,
in that, I know I will create 100 millionaires. So all the immersion into business that I've done in especially the last 5 years, just deep immersion with some of the best teachers and mentors I have. This will be easy because whatever you tell the brain, if this is simple, this is easy, this is fun, you can break through anything. And I'm like, yep, this is what I'm going to do because I didn't learn all of this business, how to make multiple six figures into the millions just for Patricia. I'm like, I have a dream to not only build business schools and orphanages, even in Bolivia, my own country, but also to create other millionaires. So the impact just keeps going. So anyway, just bouncing off of what your statement there was.
I'm glad you're sharing it with us. Yes, because I mean, you're sharing it with love. you have a goal bigger than yourself, like you said, and
Mhm.
you're not going to get there alone.
Yeah.
uh, and at the same time, you're going to help a lot of people through the path, and you have already a reason why, like you have who you are. I mean, you already planned who you're going to help. Orphanages, you said you're going to open up
Mhm.
orphanages and schools. So that's amazing. That's amazing. You're such an example to a lot of us. So I so appreciate you being here today. So share with us, what has been your biggest challenges through life?
Challenges in life. I think goes along to the earlier statement of who I was, because I allowed people to tell me who I was. Not so much that they said, this is who you are, but you know how the feelings that people make you feel like you're smaller than, you're never going to make it. I was like the black sheep of the family because apparently I would cause a lot of trouble or problems. And there were things that did happen, yes, that came through me. And one of them was I had contracted polio when I was 10 months old and a severe case of tonsillitis. So I used crutches and a brace for mobility. And I learned that I had a primary question that I always asked. And the question became, what's wrong with me? And whenever we have a question, I'm sorry, whenever we have a question, the brain always brings to our table why that question is true, and supporting evidence, correct? So I'm like, what's wrong with me? Well, it must be because of this and this and this. So, and what happens is if you don't ask an empowering question, you get put into this downward spiral. And not only, when you're petite and you're on crutches, and kids and whoever, they're always questions like, oh, what's wrong with you? Enforcing my question, what's wrong with me? I'm like, well, isn't it obvious what's wrong with me? But I didn't realize that not only they were looking external, and I knew what they meant, but because it was a trigger for me in my internal question of what's wrong with me. And when I was dealing with some of these limiting beliefs, again, I was at another event, and we were told, write down your limiting beliefs. And by this time, I had worked on a lot of them. So I'm like, okay, now I'm really trying to figure out what is any other beliefs that I have I need to work on. So I do 3, just kind of general. And I'm like, I'm the overachiever, so I'm going to do 4. I'm going to do one more. And Paola, I kid you not, I put my pen to the paper and I watched myself write something that totally shook me to the core. And I was writing, the belief was that you're not good enough to be loved. And I realized, like, you know what? It just gripped me because being adopted, my belief was that my biological parents didn't want me, and that whole story. And then my upbringing told me that I wasn't good enough to be loved. And throughout life, it's like, so all these things I've held because I didn't believe I was good enough to be loved. And once I realized that, you know what? How can I change this belief? And how I changed it was the story I began to tell who Patricia was and what the meaning was. And so I learned that my beginnings of my childhood, I was told that my biological mother didn't want me. So she gave me to my dad. My dad couldn't take care of me, so he gave me to my aunt. And my aunt, I became really sick. And so they took me to the orphanage, and that's where I stayed. So, and all this, and then through, growing up, I remember sitting with my adopted mother and my 2 brothers, and my brothers are sitting there and they said, Mom, we love you. Or we called her Mama. Mama, we love you. And I chimed in. I said, I love you too. And she says, I don't believe you. And I was just crushed. I'm like, no, so the whole idea of love for me was very distorted. And so now I'm like thinking about, you're not good enough to be loved. And I realized the meanings we put to things completely changes. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Because it's one thing to have a belief, one thing like, okay, what am I going to focus on, what meaning to it? And so I looked at it to see, what could it mean? Why am I not good enough to be loved? And it's like, that's not a good question, but a better question is why am I so good? to be loved? What are the things that I can love about me? What are the things that I love about myself? Because you and I know where there's plenty of things that we know, like, I don't like this about myself, or people are like, I don't like that about myself. But to really learn to love who I was that moment to know you can't give away what you don't have. And if you can't have that love for yourself, how can you give it to the full extent to others? To be really true and real and authentic. And so that was, I think, one of the challenges that I grew up thinking I wasn't good enough to be loved, in that perspective. And instead of the question of what's wrong with me, I could totally change that question to how can I use this moment even greater to be the leader I'm called to be? And that's a different question, like, what's wrong with me? And I love how we can take all those, and I learned it through Tony Robbins, how you can take those questions that are not empowering to scramble them, like, yeah, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? So, and it becomes a game, but truly it started shifting my identity. And I'm a woman of faith. So I just also knew, and even in church, it's like, well, God loves you. God loves you. I'm like, it seemed like words, pastors would pat me on the back. Oh, I love you. And, and because love was so foreign to me, I'm like, that's fake. I could tell when it was fake and when it was real. It also became my downfall for a little bit, but then I realized until, I'll tell you a quick story here with I live with another mother, and it was the mother that I always wanted, but I didn't know. And she was a student of mine, but before she became a student, she was at this store buying records. And she's pulling out records, and she got a record with the gospel songs, and listening to it. And it had an accordion in it. And she just felt like us listening, like, I should learn to play the accordion. She just felt like she was supposed to. Now, accordion was not in her family, right? So then her brother was a pastor, or is a pastor, and I was a little home church, and she was walking out the door, and he says, I just feel from the Lord that you're supposed to learn the accordion. And she's like, twice, in that week, like, okay, I think God is telling me I need to play the accordion. So she goes to the studio where I was working and buys an accordion. I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy an accordion. I'm going to take some lessons. And she's thinking she's getting the guru guy, he's from Estonia. And her story says, and then he hands me off to this child. And that was me, and it's like, okay, this is going to be my new teacher. Long story short, she became the gift of being the mother I never had. And what's interesting is that when I was growing up, because my adopted parents were older, but I would watch these kids play, and it's like the parents were always so young, and I thought they're so pretty. The moms are so pretty. They're young. They're playing with their kids. And in my mind as a kid, I dreamed that the perfect family would be, they would have a white picket fence. The family car was a Subaru, and the mother was pretty. And guess what? When I got invited, when she said, I will become a mother to you if you want, and I moved in initially just as roommates, but then she became that mother, and it hit me like, oh my goodness, she has a Subaru. There's a white picket fence, and she's pretty, I was like, this is amazing. And it just like helped just seal that part of me and she was always giving, and she carries this big heart of love. And I got to see the tangible version of what love looked like, because I never had that. And now I'm like, okay, this is where that began to shift, and where that belief that I'm not good enough to be loved was my story. And because it was my story, I had the power to change the story, that I am good enough to be loved, and I want to love, because if I can love me, I can love others.
That is beautiful. I hope you all are listening to this because we can change our story. Even if it was, dramatic, even if we had a sad story, even if we have a consecutive of ugly situations in our past, we can change our story now. We can pick up everything that it was good about it. We can pick up that it made us stronger, that it made us wiser, that it gave us the strength to move forward, to want a better life. we don't have to live in our past, because we would be miserable. We would create our own misery if we live in our past, and we are only giving attention to those ugly situations, sad and unfair, unjust situations that we lived. But now we have the power, we have the ability to change our story so that we can walk into life with a smile, like joyful, grateful for who we had in the past that taught us how to behave. Because even during ugly situations, people are teaching us not to behave like them. So it was the learning moment back, in your past, but now we have the ability to create a new story for a brighter future. So thank you for sharing your story, being vulnerable in teaching us that you had a limiting belief that you thought you weren't lovable, but you are lovable. Because I know I saw you this last weekend. It's like huge smile, lots of radiance of love within you. Now I'm curious about music. You said music is your passion, but growing up, like, how do you, who gave you the instrument, or who taught you how to play music?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So in the family that I was raised, it's like everybody played something. The piano, the singing. Piano was the most popular one, but my brother played the accordion, and so I think I was 8 years old, and he was 10, and so I thought the accordion was so cool. It was just the sound of it, and so I asked my friends, "Can I play the accordion?" And they're like, "No, you're just trying to copy your brother, so you start the piano." So much to my disappointment, I began the piano. So I'm like, okay, but I was a quick learner. So I was like and often I was like, "Can I do the accordion now? Can I do the accordion?" And they saw my progress was so quickly, and they're like, "Okay, okay," because I was pretty relentless. Like, "Can I do the accordion?" And so I caught up to where my brother was, and we took lessons from a gal named Ruth Gilfillan. And I always love her. So grateful she was my first teacher, because teachers make the whole world of whether a child will love or hate whatever subject it is, right? So I didn't realize until now, looking back, she wasn't really advanced musically as far as notes and rhythms. And she was very open about that. But the one thing that she instilled in me, she says, have fun with your music, and we'll have the beat. And so we played. I grew up playing dance music, old time music, and finally then I got into the classical world of music a bit, and went to a different teacher because Ruth said, you've surpassed me. I had really nimble fingers. So I went to another teacher, studied with him a little bit, and then it came to going to college. Now, I didn't want to go to college because I'm like, this is my own story. It's just like, I'm playing at these farmer markets. People are putting money in my case. Like, I'm making money. This is fine. I can do this the rest of my life. I don't want to go to college. But it was made clear that you're going to go to college. And so I applied to different schools, and Whitworth University, I applied there, and they initially said no. But then I got a call and they said, tell you what, why don't you find a teacher? If you know of a teacher that can teach at a collegiate level, we will consider it. And I'm like, well, I compete in Canada, this competition, and there was a guy there that his teacher, he and I were always neck and neck, and I knew technically he was very good. So I said, I know his teacher, and his teacher is in Spokane near Whitworth. So they called him, hired him, but they first had to do an audition of me. So I went in with my accordion, played a classical piece, and usually people think of the accordion as this polka box, or the grandfathers play or whatever. It's in the squeeze box. But I grew up with all variety of music. But the number one thing was I had fun with it. So I went into school and they listened to it and they're like, okay, we'll give you 2 years. If you can prove to us that the accordion can be a viable, concert instrument, we will consider it. So teacher was hired. I made it into Whitworth. And it was really, really interesting that, because I came from such a large family, I had to pay my way through college. And so I got a little job working at the aquatic center there. But the months that I needed money, like whether it was for laundry or extra, the phone would ring Patricia, can you play at this wedding? Can you play for this and that? And it was just miraculously how that all worked together, because the accordion became that vehicle of when I needed something. It's like it was things were provided for us. So for that, an instance. The other thing was because I didn't speak growing up, we didn't get to have our own opinions about things, or, you know, voice our thoughts, ideas. So I grew up very mute, and not like totally mute, but, so I didn't know how to ask questions. You're told like, ask better questions. I'm like, I don't even have a question to ask, to much less have better questions to ask. So, but because had to hide in my music because of the abuse and all of that, I became defined my worth in the music and learned the intricacies of music at a depth that would serve me later on in life that I didn't know about. So here I am thinking, just playing the accordion and going to college, and I really loved the instrument. I had a teacher there that made music, my piano teacher, Dr. Shefflin, she played 8 notes on piano. And I was like, what did you do? And she said, I do this. I'm like, you didn't just do that. You did something else. And it was just the musical parts that she brought out. And I was at a jury where I had to play a Mozart piece on the piano. And because I took piano and accordion in college. And the judges were always saying, every person that went up there, I watched them, and they would say, you did this great, and you need to work on this, So send them away on something to work. I get there, I play my Mozart piece, waiting for like, okay, great. They tell me the great things. And I love to hear the things I need to work on, because that's how you become better. And instead, the judge was like, okay, you did this great. I loved this. And so thank you for performing with me next. And I was like, wait a minute, where's the feedback? And I remember going to back to my next lesson with Dr. Shefflin. I said, Dr. Shefflin, he said nothing to me. I mean, and again, my primary question was, what's wrong with me? Like, did he think I was too fragile because I have the crutches, or what was that? And she laughed. She said, Patricia, she said, it wasn't that you're not, you didn't play well. She said, you played well. In fact, you played so well, there was nothing for him to critique. And I'm thinking, well, I'm very clear that I am not where I hear these other pianists, playing these big concertos. But she said, you have so much natural, innate things that you do. You just don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I know what I'm doing so I do it better? Well, then after college, I met another teacher who, this was a big turning point for me in my musical career. Her name is Kendall Feeney, and she's passed from us now due to cancer. But when I studied with her, she said the same thing. She's like, you do so much in music that you don't even know what you're doing, do you? I said, I don't know. She said, I do, and I will help you put a language to it. And so she began, as I studied with her, to take the things I was doing in music. She said, oh, we call it this. I'm like, oh, it's a turnaround. Okay, so now that I'm putting a language to some of the things I was doing, and then she taught me other tools, my teaching ability went from just an average teacher to what set me apart from a lot of teachers. That people think you have to have this talent in music and all these things. And it's like, no, it's a skill. Everything can be developed, whether it's in music, whether it's business, whatever it is you want to go into, there's a skill. Now, it does help if, like in music, your fingers are more nimble or things like that, but it's really not, we're not limited by what people typically say we're limited by. Let's say music. Oh, you have to be musical, it's the talented ones. And I can guarantee you, Paola, I had some of the most advanced students that even went to the international stages that began very non-musical. So I knew it was a skill that can be taught. So Kendall began to put that language, and then she prepared me for the World Championships, because that's like, I want to go to that level. And so musically, she was able to grow me in that field so well. And then I went to France and studied with a master teacher in the accordion world, Dr. Frédéric Deschamps, and he produces world champions because of technique. And so you put the things that Kendall put to me, the art, and then the technique, which you could call the science of it. So the art and science of it all together. And I was the first one and in decades, they told me that representing United States at the World Championships, and I won third. So it was Russia, Italy, and then USA. And they were like, like, oh, come on, who's from USA going to come play polkas? And then I walk in. Number one, the accordion, because it's such a physical instrument, they're like, it's predominantly a male instrument. And they're like, oh my goodness, it's a female. And she's not playing polkas. Anyway, it was like the judges crossed arms, like, okay, this should be interesting. But I played music that was not just from US. I put it all together as a repertoire with the help of Frederick Deschamps and with Kindle's, hearing all that together. And the thing that changed it for me was that Kendall believed in me. She said, you've got what it takes. And sometimes you just need that one person to come and say, you have what it takes. And because I didn't want to let it, I'm like, okay, she says I do, I must. And so sometimes when you doubt yourself, borrow somebody else's belief. And you can then go, there's nothing that could ever stop you, until, and allowing their belief, borrowing their belief in you to do the thing until you become, you develop that belief inside of you to do the thing you want to do. And that's what Kendall did for me. And now I have that same thing in the business world with Dan Locke, who believed in me to say, okay, I think you can do this in business and this. Now, Dan has 9 million followers in the business world, has acquisitions in businesses, 100 millions. I mean, he's like killing it in that world. But for him to turn to me and saying, and nominating me for one of his biggest programs, that I'm like, wow. So just an example of, you can, do whatever you want. But if you don't believe you can, just borrow somebody else's belief, just like Kendall did for me.
That is beautiful what you share. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, I want to say two things that you share that I want to emphasize for our audience. The first one is like, you can add and gain any skill you want to. It doesn't mean that you have to be born with that talent. That there are people out there that can train you. Like, it could be music, it could be I don't know, dancing. There's a lot of skills out there that sometimes we think we're
Speaking.
not good. Yes, speaking, yes, that
Yeah.
we think we're not good enough. Here goes back to somebody made us feel that we weren't good enough at one point, and we adopted that limiting belief, and we think, oh, I'm not young enough. I'm not fit enough for it. It's like, I've never done that in my life, even though you feel the curiosity within you that you would like, maybe your mind is taking you to dreaming, what if I could dance this way, what if I could be a public speaker, what if I could change the world with music. So I hope you're understanding us right here, that you can, because your brain is always making new cells, and as long as you're training, you're going to gain, like level 1. Then if you continue to practice, you're going to gain level 2, and so on and on, because Rome was not built in one day, right? So we have to start from the foundation. And if you need to borrow somebody else's belief, do it, because somebody has walked that path already for you and for me and for Patricia. Somebody has walked the path already, and all we have to do is like, if they did it, it's like, I'm human too, so I'm capable of doing it. But we have to have the will and the power to say, okay, I'm going to start today. Even if it's losing weight, if you see a person that is thin, that is the same age, same gender, it's because it's possible. But we just have to, change sometimes our mindset to like, okay, I choose to do it, and I'm going to borrow somebody else's belief. Now, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I've heard you said that because of music and learning how to tangle music, that helped you to become a really good business coach, understanding how money works. Uh, could you share with us, uh, how can we change that limiting belief? Because sometimes we think that money is bad. We think, we've grown up and we've heard stories that people that have money are rude, people that have money do evil things. And I'm one of them, because I grew up hearing stories and reading stories. So before we go, we have about 5 minutes left. Could you just share with us a little bit of how we can begin to change the mindset of how we can benefit our life and other people's life if we learn to multiply our money?
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. So that is money is actually one of my favorite topics now because of the limiting beliefs I used to have. Because it's like, as a music teacher, I was like, we want to serve as many people as we want. And then I had students that couldn't always afford my prices. And it's like, oh, I should just give it away and this and that. But really, what it came down to in that perspective, because I nearly lost, when I was telling you, I nearly lost my business and trying to make everything work together and realizing that I didn't value money. I didn't, it was kind of, it wasn't, it was, yeah, like bad things. Like I felt guilty for charging. And then what I learned when I went to business mastery, and I learned like, oh, I'm the chokehold number one. Second of all, I needed to raise my prices. I'm like, I can't raise my prices because if I raise my prices, I'm for sure going to lose all my students. But it took me 9 months because I was so like, oh, I don't want to do this to them. I just wanted to help people. So I took the leap and I'm like, okay, starting September, new prices are coming out. And it's just like this whole hold on my heart of like, oh, am I doing these bad things, with money, and I'm going to lose these students. And so that September came, raised my prices. People, some of my students said, we were wondering when you were finally going to raise your prices. I'm like, are you kidding me? What? They're like, yeah, we can pay this. And then the ones that were struggling, they're like, we'll make it work because we want to stay with you. And you know what happened, Paola? That when I raised my prices, people began to value their time with us, because it was before it was like, oh, sorry, we forgot about the lesson. Can you refund us? Or, oh, I booked my hair appointment on that day. I forgot. Or it's like, oh, yeah, we didn't practice this week. We just, whatever. When I raised my prices, people showed up. People that pay attention. And so all of a sudden, because especially any skill, whether it's business, speaking, music, the more consistent you can be with it, the better you're going to get. And so I realized that I actually gave my students a gift by raising my prices, because then they stepped up to the plate and they started producing. They started showing up for their lessons. They made sure that nothing came in the way of their lesson time with us. And so that was one of the first things I learned, that money, when you're selling, it's serving. If I hadn't done that, how many more kids or students would have not showed up and realized, as for some, that was part of their dream, wouldn't have taken it. And so I was the first boom that I was like, wow, okay, so selling is serving. So I got that part. And then it became to, I have, as probably some of you guys listening, is like, sometimes people with a lot of money are rude. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be like that person or that organization, because it's just the rude people. But somebody's told me, they're like, if you judge people, with what my perception of like, oh, they're rude. And in my mind, I had put everybody in that category that makes money. But I'm like, the people I love, like say Tony Robbins, Joseph McClendon, all these others, they're not that way. Dan Locke, they're not that way. So it's not everybody. So I had put kind of the whole scene, like, I'm like, but because you have to be true to your identity and who you are. If you think that's bad, then what does that put me that's trying to make a lot of money? I'm like, I don't want to be that bad person. So therefore, I'm not going to be the bad person. So therefore, the link in that is making a lot of money. So I'm like, nope, not going there. That is not going to be a belief, that you can have a lot of money to serve. Yes, it'll buy you many things, and money, the other thing, Paolo, was that people think money is hard to get. There it
Yes,
is.
and we're almost out of time. I'm gonna post this on our social media. This is for Patricia. Is a free ebook, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I'm going to put it there. We run out of time. We have to invite her again. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody that is here. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please go to spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thank you so much for everybody that is here listening to Patricia and I today. I hope you found an aha moment, something that you can implement into your life. to create a brighter future. Blessings to you all. Thank you, Patricia. High five.
Thank you, Paola. Yes, high five.
Yay!